Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me. If you're just joining and it's your first time, this is Michelle Fanger and this is Immigration Times. Provide information in regards to immigration, U.S. immigration. I practice here in the United States, where I'm more knowledgeable on U.S. immigration laws, not too familiar with, migrating to other parts of the world. So please, I know it's 3 o'clock. A lot of people might be busy. It's not the average time that people join in, but please share, tell your family and friends that I'm on. And I would love to have you bring all your questions that you might have, and so I could answer them. Like a lot is going on in regards to immigration right now. We see a lot of people coming through the border because people are seeking asylum. But there are legal ways that you could try to get into the United States. A lot of people always assume that you have to relocate to the United States through a family member. That is so far from the truth. There are other ways that you could migrate, and I'm here today to go through a few of the options. I think that I've gone through options before in other shows, but today I'm going to talk more about your options and wait on people to provide me with any questions that they have. And I'll also be talking about some topics that came across my desk this week and questions that I have encountered. One of the major things that I want to point out that oftentimes people are always talking about this is that people have to be careful and mindful of scams. Because I know a lot of people need to migrate and they're already here in the United States and they want to legalize their status, so they get anxious, and when they hear of any opportunity to legalize their status, oftentimes they don't think thoroughly about it and they try to jump on the ship to say, all right, I could get that benefit. Like one such call I got this week was from an individual who is without status, but he was told that if he paid a fee, he would be able to get work authorization, and that the party wanted to collect money to apply for a work permit for that party, although the individual has been here in the United States without any form of legal status. So what I want to say is that is not so. Do not take your money and give to anybody if you don't have legal status. There are only certain individuals who are here without legal status that are able to get work authorization. And it's for those individuals who have a case that is pending, meaning they have a spouse that is petitioning for them. If you're here illegally, meaning if you came through, you were inspected but you overstayed, you are able to get your work authorization. Or you have an older child who is over 21 that's going to petition for you. Or if you were a victim of a crime and you're helping law enforcement, there are steps to getting work authorization. But if there's no way for you to get any form of immigration benefit, you can just go ahead and apply and get a work authorization. What will happen, and this I must say, is that what will happen is that, yes, they could submit the application and say they're submitting it on your behalf, but more likely it's going to be denied because you're not entitled to it. So yes, if you submit, they'll take their money, then you'll send the money to immigration. They will take that money, but they will ultimately deny your application, because if you do not qualify for work authorization, they're not going to allow it. So just be mindful of that. And I've heard several other scams about people helping people to get driver's license within certain states that don't allow it. So be mindful of that. If you do have cash, and just save your money, because I know you're anxious, but wait until there's some benefit. On the show, I'll talk about any benefits that I hear about. But right now, Congress hasn't pushed towards anything major for immigration, which will allow individuals without legal status to get legalized. I know they had a proposal, but when Biden was running for office, but it has gotten nowhere. So do not take your money and give to individuals unscrupulously, because you work hard for your money. However you get your money, whether by work, you saved your money. So don't just throw away your money. So be mindful of individuals that have scams. So that was one of the major things I want to talk about. So definitely, if you have questions, Juliet said, good afternoon, Ms. Michelle. Hope you're having a great week so far. Yes, I have. It's a very stressful week, but I'm glad you're here. Remember to share, tell your family and friends that I'm on. And for those joining, you could definitely ask your questions, immigration questions. If you don't want to ask your questions, you could send an email. I'll put it in the chat to admin@fangerlawfirm.com. And when you do send a message, just say the title of the show, Immigration Times, so we know what it's pertaining to, and we'll respond. Okay. Another thing that came up is I'm freezing. I'm not sure why. Am I freezing to everyone? I'm not sure what's happening. The internet should be good. I'm at work. I'm in my office. So I hope it's going good and you're all hearing me. But yes, so if you have questions, definitely ask. If you're just joining in, it is Immigration Times, and I'm here to just talk about anything immigration if you have questions. You are not, okay, thank you, Teswana. So yeah, I appreciate that. So if you have questions, so one of another thing that I was asked is by an individual who was already here in the United States, and they wanted to know if it would be better for them to leave the country and then have a family member petition for them, their child. Just wanted people to be mindful, as I told that individual, that if you overstay here in the United States, it depends on how long you overstay, you could be barred from coming back. So I would definitely recommend that if you have a petition, especially if it's an older child that is a US citizen, you're entitled to immediate benefits. So you don't, and they usually look past the fact that you overstayed. They don't hold it against you. So I would recommend that you stay, because if you do leave, you will be barred, and it's harder to get a waiver, because there are waivers for you, but it's harder for you to get a waiver if you leave the country. So if you are entitled to some form of benefits and you think you are, I would not recommend you leave unless you do a waiver, which gives you permission to leave to adjust your status, which you'll have to do before you leave the US. But it allows you to adjust your status outside of the United States. All right. So it's not recommended that you overstay, but things happen, people overstay. But if you know that you're coming to visit and you might be staying an extended time, I recommend that you get an extension of your stay, whether if it's, like a visitor's visa or student visa, get an extension. If you don't get that extension, then definitely leave. But if you're already here, I wouldn't recommend you leave until you figure out what legal remedy you have, because you can be barred from coming back to the United States. All right. But in some instances, while I'm saying that though, but if you are a victim of abuse where your spouse is abusing you and you left the country because of that, and you do file what's called a VAWA for individuals who are victims of abuse, you are able to return to US. So there are limited circumstances where you're allowed to return to the United States. Okay, another thing is that, like, if you are a US citizen, because oftentimes a lot of individuals, because of the change in the law, don't realize that they're actually US citizen. That they got it through their father or their mother, but because their parent didn't do the extra step, they don't know that they were entitled to be a US citizen. The law has changed recently, so it allows a lot of people who are actual citizens. So that's something that you can also look into if you were actually a US citizen. There are certain requirements, but if you want to learn more, you could definitely reach out to me. If you're just joining, please share, tell your family and friends I'm on. I see a lot of people watching. If you have questions, you could definitely ask those questions, and I'll definitely provide the answers if I'm able to on this show. If not, if it's something that I'm not familiar with, I'll definitely research it and provide the answer at the next show, which our show is on every Wednesday at 3 p.m. It's a short show, but it's very informative, and I like the whole setup. So what other thing we want to talk about? Another thing I want to talk about is that, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of people always assume that the only way to get a green card is through a family member, which is not the case. As you know, you could get your green card through an employer, if you're employed, they could assist you with sponsoring you, which I've dealt with a few of those cases. An employer can sponsor you if you're with them for an extended period of time, whether you're in a managerial position or even if you're an unskilled person, there's a special green card, it's called an EB3, where you have to meet certain requirements. Like you have to establish that nobody's here willing and able to work, which we know the economy here right now is bad, where you can't find good and able workers. But if you do have an employer that could sponsor you and you're not out of status, then that's an option to get your green card. Also, another way is that if you are of extraordinary ability or skills, whether in art, science, or athletics, and you feel like you have like a professor, you have articles that you have written, you stand out in your field, then you could do a petition or have a school or employer petition for you, or you could also self-petition for yourself as an educator. So those are options for individuals who are looking for other options to get green card, because they don't have a family member. So that's another option. Another way, as I've said before, is whether you witness a crime or were a victim of a crime and you have assisted law enforcement, then you're able to get a green card through that means. So a labor violation, I think I mentioned it before, is whether you are working for an employer where you're overworked and underpaid. Those are certain violations that the US does not tolerate. So if you're a victim of that, then you're able to do a self-petition of what's called a T visa to get your green card. And also what is good is that your family members could also benefit from this green card, because if you have children and a spouse, they're able to benefit from these applications. So that's why I always say, like, you have to, a lot of people say they don't know what they're supposed to do because they say, I don't have a spouse, I don't know what to do. But then I always say, definitely consult with an attorney, because even if you don't hire the attorney all the way, you could definitely consult with the attorney to look into options that you have or things that you might qualify for. But what the attorney will do, I know what I do, is I sit with people, look at the facts, the scenarios, and then we go through your different options, right? Another thing I've seen come across where people are asking about their applications, why it's taking so long to be processed. The USCIS is still playing catch up with the older application that were submitted before COVID, where they had a lot of issues, lost data, missing files, moving office. So there's a lot of delays. So some of the older cases are taking a little bit of time to be processed. But what I've noticed with the recent cases is that if you submit a good application with no issues, whether it's through family or child, they usually approve the green card. They send it to you in the mail. And usually they forego the interview process. But that's if up front you submit a comprehensive package that establishes all the facts, that if it's through marriage, that okay, this is a legitimate marriage, they have bills together, they have evidence supporting this marriage, they look at it and they say, all right, we'll approve it, we don't need an interview. And just be aware, if you are married under 2 years, what they'll do is give you a conditional green card. If you are married for under 2 years. If you're married over 2 years, you're more than likely will get the 10-year green card. With the conditional green card, after 2 years, you'll have to remove the condition if you're not aware. Sometimes people don't go forward to remove the condition because the relationship broke down with their spouse and they think that they can't move forward. But with everything, USCIS is fair, immigration is fair. They understand people go through things, people have issues. So if you're going through a marital problem, they'll understand. So, but you'll have to do, if you want to remove the condition, you'll have to remove it on your own. But you'll have to establish why your spouse is not filing the petition with you, whether it's abuse or abandonment. So you'll have to look at the facts and then figure out how to solve it. Michael Tomlinson said, where there's a will, there's a way. Yes, there's always a way to get legalized status. You just have to, figure it out and how it's been done. It can be done and work around it. Sometimes people will say, oh, I have criminal issues, so I don't want to do it. But there are ways around it. and to get it done, where you could get even for citizenship if you have certain crimes. And another thing I want to talk about, because I did a consultation with this too, is that for individuals who are getting their citizenship, and sometimes people think like traffic infractions, whether it's speeding, if they were cited, that it's not important or something to disclose. You have to disclose that information, right? And sometimes they say, but everything was expunged where I did my time or I paid the fine, and they said they will remove it from my records, so I don't have to put it on my application. No, that's not true. Even if your case is expunged, you still have to disclose it if you're going through to get your US citizenship. And wherever you commit a crime in the world, you have to disclose it. Don't think because I'm from Jamaica or Africa, they'll never know. They usually do a thorough background check, and they do find that information. If you do what I've seen before, where you do get a blight, where they missed it the first time, they can review your file. They could pick up your file, review it, find the information, and rescind your citizenship, and then put you in deportation. So always disclose the information, whatever it is, crime. Don't think because it occurred 20 odd years ago, you don't have to disclose it. You have to disclose it, but they're not going to wait heavily on whether they're going to approve it if the crime didn't occur within the 5 years before you submit your application. But if you don't put it on the application, they're going to say you're willful in trying to be deceptive and committing fraud and misrepresentation. So always remember the information. If you don't remember if you commit any crime, I always recommend to clients to do a background check, right? Once you do a background check will pull up wherever you were in the US and whatever crime you committed, and then you could see, and once you see, then you could try to get the disposition of those cases, right? Thank everybody for joining, and please tell your family and friends, share the live. And also, if you missed the first portion of the show, you could watch it again on Jamaicans.com, right? Sharnette said, hi, Sharnette. If I'm still married and have a current restraining order, my abuse was from 2014. Can I still what? Apply? If I'm still married and have a current restraining order, was it restraining order against you or against somebody else? Did you abuse a person? All right, so with abuse cases, you have to be mindful, because if you were convicted for domestic violence, if you were convicted, then that's a bad thing, because why is it saying more and I'm not seeing more? For some reason, I'm not seeing all the typing, Sherrod. So I guess redo it. So, all right. So if domestic violence, one of the big no-nos that could get you deported, right? So if you are the one that committed the abuse and then you're trying to get some form of status, it might be an issue, especially citizenship, where it might put you in deportation, right? So I always say, just be careful when you have these domestic violence cases. In some instances, I've had people say, well, you know what? I pled to a lesser, I just accepted the charge because I didn't want to get the other party in trouble. Or I did it because I was fearful, I didn't know what to do. If you're gonna have a case like that, I always say, as I always say before, if you have any criminal issues, always work with a criminal attorney and an immigration attorney. So you have to be careful, because sometimes you might think because I pled guilty or served this amount of time or pay a fine, it doesn't impact me immigration wise, but it might be. It might. So always speak to an immigration attorney if you have a criminal case. So before you make any determination of anything, you actually know what you're pleading to, because it might have an immigration impact. So I'm not sure. So if it's a person that have the restraining order and the abuse that's going through the immigration process, it doesn't matter how far back, it might be an issue, right? Because domestic violence, some crimes like drug trafficking are like a major no-no for immigration. So with those cases, based on the facts I'll always tell clients to, if their case is outdated and I think it's going to impact them immigration-wise, I always say go to try to reopen the case to see if you could plead on the case or, you know, get another charge instead of the charge that you have. And also, immigration will look at what the state law says. So if in your state something is a felony, they're gonna look at it as a felony. But you know, some states, some crimes are not. Felonies are misdemeanor or citation. But they look at your state to see what it is under state law. So just be mindful of that. As I said, it's very important if you are going to go through the immigration process that you are mindful of any crimes you commit and know how it's going to impact you. Don't look at the amount of time you're going to serve or the fine you're going to pay, but look at how it will impact you immigration-wise. Okay? Thanks everybody for tuning in. All those who are just joining, I hope you're enjoying the program. If you do like the program, remember to come on every Wednesday at 3 p.m. and I'm Michelle Fanger. And if you have any questions in regards to immigration, you could definitely ask and I'll definitely respond. It's a short show, but very insightful. And I try to talk about topics that come across my desk. And if you have questions, you could definitely ask those questions. I know we're going down to the time where we're going to talk about what other major thing that came to my office that I consulted with that is very important. We're coming to that. If you're just joining, before I talk about, be careful of scammers. Not everything that appears to be something great is necessarily great. Always definitely try to speak to an expert because everybody have a way or a scam going. So always speak to an expert to find out if it's legitimate. Look at different sources to see if it's legitimate because I know people are hungry and they want to legalize their status. But be mindful of what you do. All right. And another thing is that what I want to talk about is that if you do intend to go through the immigration process, if you have younger kids or family that are outside of the country and they're going through the adjustment status, just remind them that sometimes they do the drug test, which I've seen a few cases where people have failed. Even though like some areas legalize marijuana, it's not federally legalized. That makes sense? So if you are convicted of marijuana trafficking or anything, possession, it might impact you. Smoking and failing a drug test might impact you. I'm not sure why they're still doing the drug test portion, but I've had clients that have failed the test. What they'll do is that they will give you like 2 opportunities to redo it, but after a while they'll close it out, and it makes no sense that happen if you reach so far in the process to start over the whole process, which might impact you. All right, so if you know family and friends who are going through the immigration process, just tell them be mindful and also be careful, because I've had people going through the process and end up committing a crime and assume that it's not going to pop up. Yes, it's going to pop up in the system because they're gonna do authorities. Because even if you do an interview, say for citizenship, and you commit the crime before you get sworn in, it will come up and it will impact you whether they'll deny it. It's up to their discretion. So you have to be careful and mindful that when you're going through the process, you stay out of trouble. I always tell my clients, stay out of trouble. And I always tell my clients that as soon as their child or minor, or as soon as they qualify to become a U.S. citizen, go ahead and apply, because it's the only sure way that you have some form of protection. Because you could be here for 20 odd years and get into trouble and end up in deportation. And that's a total waste of time, because sometimes you go back to a country that you don't know or are familiar with. So if you do feel like you qualify to be a U.S. citizen, or you're unsure, if you're unsure, consult an attorney and find out. Oh, I keep always talking about consulting an attorney. Okay, so you could reach out. How can you contact me? You can contact me at 904-930-0039 if you have questions. I always provide my email. I'm going to put it in the chat right now. So if you have questions, concerns, you could definitely reach out to me and ask. And I'm Michelle Fanger. If you're just joining, I'm Michelle Fanger, and I've been practicing for over 13 years, immigration specifically, and family law for Florida. All right, and I'm happy for everybody that tuned in. It's not where we want to be, but people, tell your family and friends to tune in every Wednesday at 3 p.m. I'm on every Wednesday at 3 p.m. to talk about immigration matters and things that impact our community. Right? I know I said before, I'm going to try to get people on, but it's kind of hard to get people on at 3 to just talk about topics like various agencies, which I'm going to start focusing on to have those people come on to talk to us about matters that impact us. But I want to thank those who tuned in, and I want to thank those who asked questions. It's a platform where you could bring all your questions, so definitely tune in. If you want to send me questions that you don't want to talk about on the show, you could send me an email at admin@fangerlawfirm.com. Okay, and so we're down to the wire. It was a pleasure. Well, we have a few more minutes. So anybody have any questions? So the last thing I want to talk about before I go is that look at your documentation. If you do have, whether it's your passport, look at your passport to see when the expiration date is to apply. There's a backlog to get it out. 2, if you have your green card, look at the expiration date and figure out if you want to renew the green card. I always say just go ahead and get your citizenship, but some people prefer to have their green card. But look at whether you are going to need to renew your green card so you get it in on time. And if you have a conditional green card, look at the date so you could get it in on time. And also make sure that you follow up on any appointments you have in regards to immigration. Remember, if you cannot make an appointment, you can reschedule it, and they'll definitely reschedule your appointments. So what is very important though, because a lot of people come saying, oh, my card expired. Keep a record of your documents and get them updated. If you want to get your citizenship, go ahead and get it. If your US citizenship passport, you know they have a backlog. So definitely go ahead and apply for your passport or reapply for your passport so that if an emergency comes up, you have your passport on hand. All right, so those are the little tips I want to give. And for those coming in, be mindful of how you travel. I always say this because I always get that call of someone coming in and they take away their visa and send them back home because they're coming here to work. So be mindful of how you travel. If you're coming here to visit, a B1, B2. If you're coming here to work, make sure you get the right documentation. If you're coming here to go to school, make sure you come here with a student visa. If you come here visiting and you decide to work, you could definitely change your status to that of a HB, but you have to apply and ensure you do it before your status expires. And if you want to change to a student visa, you could definitely do that. All right. So just be careful and mindful. And I look forward to being with you next Wednesday at 3 p.m. Please tell your family and friends to tune in, share the live. If you've missed the show, you could watch it again on Jamaicans.com. And I look forward again to seeing you and spending time with you next Wednesday at 3 p.m. Have a wonderful afternoon.